Welcome to The Ranking Off with Some Ranker. Just to be clear, that was not my choice for the name of the series. ISIS are on another level for me when it comes to a solid body of work. They called it quits when they felt like they had nothing more to say, and left the metal world with an impeccable and timeless discography as a result. So, to describe ISIS for the uninitiated, they were a band that formed in the late 90s and typically orbit the sounds of atmospheric sludge metal and post-rock, mostly relying on these gradual builds into these heavy walls of distorted guitars. It's a very satisfying sound for those who can get into it, but it definitely requires patience in order to truly appreciate the work that they do. It's not conventional song structures, as you might imagine. Now, ignoring all of the side projects and EPs, we're only going to be focusing on the 5 full-length studio albums, as that gives us enough to talk about in video form. So at number 5, we have the only relatively easy choice for me, and that is 2000's Celestial. Celestial is easily the band's heaviest release, and is the most naked in its influences from bands like Godflesh and Neurosis. But that's actually the problem with it. ISIS clearly don't have their own unique identity yet, or at least it isn't fully formed. If I had to distinguish ISIS and Neurosis, both the titans of atmospheric sludge, it's that Neurosis is more on the nightmarish and industrial-flavoured take, while ISIS has that emotive and sprawling sound, like an award-winning drama version of the snuff film that is a Souls at Zero or a Through Silver and Blood. Not to say that it's wholly unoriginal, as glimpses of what would become are here and there, but it definitely leans on the aggression with these blown-out guitars designed to punish the eardrums. The dynamics aren't quite perfected yet. With the vocals and guitars taking up so much of the mix, you don't really get the breathing room that future albums have in spades. Not to say nuance is completely absent, like the use of acoustic guitar in Deconstructing Towers or Collapse and Crush. It reminds me of Kyles's original output before they found some unique sonic qualities with their third full-length onwards. I will say that the use of interludes works better here, as they give you some much-needed atmospherics and breathing room. The track CFT also brought out more of those emotionally weighty qualities that are a key draw to the ISIS most people know and love. Contrasting this completely is the band's 4th release that leans heavily on the post-rock side. That album, of course, being In the Absence of Truth. This is probably the best introduction for newcomers who don't necessarily come from a metal background. The mood is overall brighter, as evidenced in the opener Wrists of Kings, which doesn't come through with the pop that others do. Most of the songs on this one seem to revolve around the drummer Aaron Harris, who has a very particular style on this one that stands out from the rest. You could argue that it can get real repetitive after a while. It feels like there's a bit of a Tool-esque feel with the tribal drum parts, clearly influenced by them to some extent. The style of drumming does really bring out some cathartic moments though, which are always important. The emotional build in songs like Garden of Light or the ending of Dulcinea, which on top of the drums has this really cool riff which brings to mind some kind of Middle Eastern flair. Holy Tears, 1,000 Shards, the whole thing is stuffed with great tracks. Just maybe too much material that can blend together if you're not on board for the ride. All enjoyable, but much like Celestial, not feeling like both sides of the band are balanced enough. Aaron Turner's vocals lean heavily on the clean singing, which I know has some people up in arms, but I think his cleans sound like a massive improvement on Panopticon, at least from a technical perspective. Now, this next one wrestled with absence for the number 3 slot. That is, of course, the band's final studio album, Wavering Radiant. The significance of this one cannot be overstated. While distinct from the previous album, it couldn't really come out without In the Absence of Truth working out the ideas that would become more streamlined on this. Ghost Key and Hall of the Dead sound more riff-driven than the last album, being composed of these different sections flowing into one another, contrasted with the gradual builds on Oceanic or Panopticon. The change of producer did them good, along with a longer gap between albums. I may take preference to the sound on Panopticon, but Wavering Radiant makes their catalogue much more interesting by its inclusion. There's a separation between the instruments, leaving more space, yet simultaneously, the end result does leave me a little more fatigued by the end of it, unlike the three that came before it. But back to the positives. 20 Minutes, 40 Years is a track that excels in this new audible ocean, acting like a dual personality with its vibes. There's more space between the instruments, of course, which leads to the sludge part of the ISIS identity firmly in the rear view, and going in a more progressive direction. The closer, Threshold of Transformation, is one of my all-time favourite ISIS songs. The final 4 minutes feel like you're witnessing the heat death of the universe before it fades out into nothing, almost as if the stars are going out. Truly a perfect note to end on, not only for this album, but for the band's entire career. Aaron Turner has long said that the band should have ended with Panopticon, and I clearly disagree. That while by its absence, from the list so far, it's one of their definitive works, of course. The places that these next two albums went into were worthy additions to ISIS and their legacy. However, kudos to the band for finally calling it quits after this one. They valued their friendship over continuing the band despite reaching what is quite possibly their peak of notoriety around this time. The next two, however, are kind of unshakable, despite some strong competition. Number 2, Oceanic. The first step into the ISIS identity, Oceanic builds on everything Celestial did well, and then some. Beginning at the End is one of my all-time favourite openers. The band in general opened with great songs, excelling at ISIS's strengths of gradually evolving, so by the end of its 8-minute runtime, it sounds nothing like how it started. The midsection of False Light, I remember clear as day crying to its midsection, feeling like this desolate and dismal environment. True power of a band that can be detected if you get a strong emotional reaction just based on the instruments alone. From Sinking has these quirky riffs, not dissimilar to the bands from the Georgia sludge world, and of course has these quieter, more emotional sections to balance it out. Carrie has this incredible slow build that comes from almost just ambience into these heavy, droning riffs. Wait is the first massive leap into more spaced out post-rock territory with some welcome female vocals to counterbalance Turner's harsh growls. He's still strictly doing growls on this one. The occasional sparse, somewhat half singing that he'd do more of on the next one. And it's really non-offensive to those people who don't typically enjoy the style, as it is really just here and there throughout the album. So don't think you're wiggling out of this recommendation, because it certainly is that. Okay, no matter where you come from, no matter what your musical background is, you've got to go check out Oceanic. And of course, the number 1. It's Panopticon. Yeah, that was kind of obvious, but really, Panopticon is front to back incredible. 2 of ISIS's signature tracks, So Did We and In Fiction, are right within the first 3 tracks, but even beyond them, the gorgeous dirge, Wills Dissolve, the shifting dynamics of backlit, the lengthy and subdued altered chorus, this definitely has the most complete track list. Not a missed opportunity nor a wasted note on this one. You can clearly hear them locking in with the formula established on Oceanic and takes it to the logical peak. So much so, you can understand why it was difficult to progress from this point onwards. The production arguably peaked on here too, as all of the tones fit the sound, and there's this grandiosity found on here that really just can't be pinned down. Each song feels like a chapter to this large narrative, and given the themes of the album, it makes sense. After 20 plus years, it is safe to say that this is a classic album, not just a classic metal album. If asked to deliver an introduction to sludge in general, this is pretty often staying in the top 5 albums indefinitely. Another plus is that you can't really say same for every other album before it. It is the lack of interludes. which helps the pacing greatly and doesn't make it feel fractured like, say, on Oceanic or Wavering Radiant. This isn't a substantial critique, none of these are, but when you've got a discography that ISIS has, you have to nitpick to distinguish them, which is a good problem to have, and these kind of problems do make a ranking more stimulating. So, this was my ranking of ISIS. I tried to be as brisk as possible. There was a lot I cut out, and there's plenty more to discuss, but I'll leave that to you, the viewer. Please leave your own lists in the comment section below.